You're all set, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, James. I'll call the meeting of the Town Hall Renovations Project Building Committee to order. Mr. Barron, please take the roll call.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Members are asked to signify their presence when their name is called. Councilor Badraco, Councilor Minor,
Here.
Mr. Claffey,
Here.
Mr. Mortensen,
Here.
Mr. Murtha, Mr. Woods,
Here.
Mr. Harpy.
Here.
You have a quorum, and this
Thank you,
meeting is
sir.
being recorded.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion for approval of prior meeting minutes.
So moved, Rod Mortensen.
Is there a second?
Second, Chris Minor.
Any discussion? All those in approval of the motion? At least
Aye.
yes.
Aye.
Unanimously approved. Public participation. Any member of the public liking to participate, please indicate so. And state your name and address when you come on.
This moment, we have two on the attendee side. Nobody has indicated their desire to speak.
Thank you, James. Project update, Frank from Downs. Frank? Is Frank
Hey,
muted?
Joe. Yep, I'm here, Joe.
Okay. How are you, Frank?
Pretty good. Yourself?
Good, thank you.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I'll go through the update, starting with the financial summary. We got a lot of ground to cover.
You still there, Frank? We can't hear you, Frank.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. You're good.
Okay. All right, we're in business. Okay, so looking at the financial summary from the last meeting that we had back in July, the new tally on approved change orders was $934,002.35. So that adjusts the GMP value to $28,694,991.35. Between pending and approximate changes that have been compiled, yields a net deduct of $38,133. I'm getting a lot of background noise too, by the way.
Yeah.
When we take into account the pending and approximate, it's a net deduct, gives us a revised GMP value of $28,656,858.35. Out of the CM contingency to date for approved COPs, we've had $497,325.13.
Joe Harpy.
Okay, out of the pending, we have $63,067.75. That adjusts our CM contingency, taking into account approved and pending, to $271,414.12, and that's included in the base GMP. Out of the owner's contingency, we started with $868,405. Approved COPs to date total $796,444.27. The changes that are being presented this evening total $9,077.84. And we've got a credit amount in the approximate column. That credit amount right now is $29,055.16. I have not tracked any soft costs over the duration of the project. That said, that would leave in the owner's contingency $91,938.05. The soft costs, again, did not track anything against it. So I'm showing the 1.7 million unchanged. And the CIP funds, again, COP 154 was the only change that was funded with CIP funds. And scrolling towards the bottom there, the total project budget stands at $30,455,606.40. Any questions on the financial summary? All right, if not, we can jump right into schedule overview. Starting with some highlights since the last time we've met at the community center. On the outside at all the canopies, we had some taping and some painting left to do. That's since been completed. We did install the exterior signage just at the east entry. Once we take the old building down, we will finish the exterior signage on the west side of the building. Panel partitions, so those have been installed since we met last, with the exception of the gymnasium. So the operable partitions for the second floor conference room within the town hall, that's complete, as well as the panel partitions for the multi-purpose rooms within the community center. The Parks and Rec kitchen, so that's been cleaned up. We're just about ready to turn it over. We have some control wiring left to do up on the roof that's connected to the hood for the oven. And the health department has come by. They have done their inspection. They have flagged a couple minor things for the Parks and Rec department to follow up on, mainly some sanitizing requirements and getting some boxes off the ground, things of that nature. Within the gymnasium, as far as work that's been completed since the last time we met in the gym, the lighting is done. All of the overhead gym equipment is done. So the motorized basketball hoops, those are all set, including the wrestling mat hoist. And the punch list, as far as punch list is concerned, we've whittled away at the punch list. We started with roughly 1,000 items on the punch list. We've got that down to roughly 70 items at this point. Of the 70, about 40 items, I'm going to say, are related to ceiling tile. Those items just need to be officially closed out in the database we're using to track punch list. So the remaining 30 items or so are a combination of some flooring items and hardware items that we're currently working on. So work in progress, other things happening in phase one. Obviously the gym, we're winding down on the gym. We've established the line striping. We've got a couple seal coats left to do. That's actually going to happen between tomorrow and Friday. We'll put the last 2 top coats on the gym floor. Abatement is well underway in phase 2, the old town hall. We're working in a top-down fashion in terms of the abatement. So we've got a good chunk of the 3rd floor, or top floor rather, abated on the north side of the old town hall. We're working in other sections on the east and west, a little bit further to the south, working top-down. So 2nd and 1st floor are also in progress. Most of the clean demo on the inside of the building is complete. And I mentioned punch list already as part of phase 1. Work that's coming up, the stair to rubber, unfortunately, I don't have a better update on the stair to rubber. I had reported in July that this material was going into production in August. They have delayed us once again. If they delay us one more time because we've been told the latest information we've got, we've been told that this material will go into production next week. If we find out again it's been delayed, then I'm going to talk to the architect and talk with the town to see if there's another option we can go with that's more readily available, just so we can get that done. The bleachers for the gymnasium, so the bleachers are scheduled to ship next week. We confirmed that with our vendor this week. The divider, same thing, we confirmed with the vendor. The divider is also shipping next week. So we are making plans to coexist in that gym when the bleachers arrive and the divider arrive. We'll be kind of working in parallel to get that work done. The wall padding will also start up in the next couple weeks. The floor base will follow right after the seal coating is done on the floor. Next week, we have the landscaper coming back, probably the middle of the week, to start raking out weeds, finish up the plantings, and go right into hydroseeding. And then phase 2, the heavy demo, exterior demo, some of that's going to start next week, starting with the roof shingles. We'll start to pull that off, but the full-fledged demo, masonry walls coming down and things of that nature, that is going to happen towards the end of September. Other milestones, again, just getting through the gym, keeping track of the bleachers, and just finishing up the wall padding and base and stuff that I've mentioned, making sure that stays on track. So far, we do have those vendors dialed in, so we don't see any issues there. We talked about, from the last meeting, we talked about a mid-September completion within the gym, and I don't see us being too far off from that mid-September completion date. And the punch list, I left this on here as critical only because just recently, actually about an hour ago or so, we did receive another list or punch list from the town that we need to digest. There's a number of items. Some of it overlaps with the design team. Some of the stuff doesn't. It's kind of a mixed bag of what we would consider punch list and what we would consider to be design items that we need to talk further about and figure out how we're going to handle. So again, I need to dissect that a little bit further. It just came in, and hopefully we'll have a better update for you at the next meeting. If there's no questions on schedule, we can dive right into the COPs. Does anybody have any questions on the schedule? All right, we'll keep swimming here. Taking a look at the COPs, I've compiled, I think we've got 32 or 33 COPs here. We've been hard at work trying to whittle away at the list of changes that we've been able to finalize for phase 1. We still have about a dozen changes out there after we get through this list. But we put a lot of effort in compiling this for you tonight. So starting with 34, the savings to the owner, that was the general trades that we've been talking about for a while now. Finally, just drawing a line in the sand, cutting this off. So $11,665.06 will go back to the town. That credit consists of a number of line items. There was some temp fence in there that's being credited back, some spray fireproofing that's being credited back, overhead doors, the line item for operable partitions, and toilet partitions. So once we went back and reconciled with these vendors, it yielded a savings that goes back to the town for that amount. Now, we did start with COP 34 around $20,000. So I did, like I said, I broke this off to start returning some of the money, but I did set up another COP so that roughly 8,000 or 9,000 is being tracked separately in another COP that hopefully I can finalize and present to you at the next meeting. COP 216, so this was mainly the third floor, although some of this COP has to do with Parks and Rec. Essentially what happened here was because of the furniture layouts being reconfigured in that process, in order to get wiring to the new configurations, we had to actually extend wiring to a number of locations. I believe we had 6 locations up on the 3rd floor. And within Parks and Rec, we had a brand new piece of systems furniture kind of out in the open in the admin space that wasn't part of our documents. So those two areas combined in terms of the wiring we needed to do totals $4,569.71. The next COP 233, that's simply to get a dedicated circuit to the hood within the Transition Academy for $425.89. COP 240, so that has to do with the east entry. Because of the head condition above that vestibule, we had to actually move the piping to the outside of that vestibule. So since we're leaving that piping in an exposed condition, we all agreed that that piping needed to be heat traced. So that's to add the heat tracing. That's the 2 separate drains that are on the roof of that east entryway. And that totals $4,632.50. 248, if you guys recall from the last meeting, I had a verbal approval to proceed with cutting in of the control joints around the community center. We have since completed that work. I believe this total amount, the $4,717.25, came in under what I had previously reported at the last committee meeting. COP 252, that's to get power to a couple auto operators. That's for the NCTV suite for $2,708.93. COP 258 came out of the final, or one of the final inspections with the health department, specific to the Parks and Rec kitchen. We had to relocate a hand sink. Not only that, but also with this change, we had to add a 100 amp shunt trip breaker and EPO switch that ties into the Ansel system for that space. So those two items combined totals $4,526.53. 267 was taken out of the CM contingency, so there's no additional cost to the GMP, but that is all of this particular item is all of the effort that went into the cleanup following that storm we had back on July 3rd. So this would be the rental of the dehumidification equipment. This would be all of the piping, the repiping rather, of the overflow drainage system to the east side of the project. And there's a few areas where we have removed and replaced carpet, including we've got some material that's actually on order to replace specific locations of vinyl plank within the Transition Academy and daycare. COP 270, so that came out of the elevator state inspection. We had to add a cabinet fire extinguisher that is specific to the 3rd floor only. That is just the cost of the cabinet itself and fire extinguisher for $231. 273 is specific to the human services reception area. We fabricated a wood countertop with support brackets. That totals $1,664.75. COP 274 has to do with getting more power to the mail room. Based on the equipment that they've got in there, they need more power. So this is to get wire mold, which is essentially surface mounted outlets in that room. It's about 40 feet of it for that main mail room on the 2nd floor for $2,437.18. 275 is specific to the council chambers. We've got 3 locations that are chief boxes, basically housing AV and power, that will not be utilized. So those boxes will remain. However, we would like to cover those with a flush cover and wrap them in the wall covering to match the adjacent finish on the wall for $444. 276, we have a number of power supplies that we wired right before turnover of the space. These are power assist devices at a number of locations. I believe we had 15 total power supplies as part of this change. And we did this work over a weekend for $7,934. $277 is to take care of drywall repairs out of the CM contingency. This encompassed basically all floors of the town hall, including the community center. 280, similar to 277, were repairs to wood doors, various locations. Again, the cost of the work taken out of the CM contingency. And then 282 and 83 are the last two COPs that we compiled for Saturday work to expedite the balance of work, mainly in the town hall and community center. We've had miscellaneous locations where we had to just wrap up hardware, finish up cabinets, and the basement was the last thing that we kind of put on the back burner. So we did have to expedite that at the end to get the lighting done for our TCO. Again, 282, 283 out of CM contingency. And if we could scroll down the list. 284, so we had flagpole lights that were added. This was for the roofer to go back and flash in the base of those flagpole light supports. And it also includes some conduit that was stubbed up through the roof after, when we added some AC wiring, again, out of CM contingency, $0. 285 is to patch back roof due to some damage that happened at the southwest corner of the community center, out of CM contingency, $0. 287 came out of the final inspection from State Records Division for the vault. There was essentially some rewiring that had to be done. We could not leave circuits on standby. The lights have to be completely off upon exiting that space. So there was some rewiring that had to be done to make that happen for $1,343.41. 291 is essentially an enclosure going around a gym cabinet that's exposed right now in the main part of the gym. This would basically be more or less a fenced-in enclosure with a door on the front of it to access the data cabinet. We did reach out to a local vendor who gave us pricing on that, and that totaled $6,868. 293, we talked about the concern at the southeast corner of the community center and the possibility of someone gaining access to the roof at the top of the stairs. This would be a preventive measure to put in these anti-climb spikes. This came from the design team. This is essentially 4 rows of anti-climb spikes at the southeast corner. You've got 4 rows kind of heading to the north along that southeast corner, and then 4 rows heading to the west for $1,728.14. Those would essentially be adhered to the top of the rubber roof. 294 has to do with I've got wall sconces here, but there are actually 2 different types of lights. There's a type S1 light that's the wall sconce at the community center. There's 6 of those. And then there's 5 type S lights that are in the lobby of the Parks and Rec area. Those lights were originally specified as 120 volt. We have 277 as our power source. So unfortunately, those lights have to be reordered. We were able to return I think it was the S1 lights for a small restocking fee. But essentially this is to get lighting replacements for those locations for $3,417.32. 295, we had a number of power supplies in the hardware package that simply were no longer required. So we pushed for a credit. There was a restocking fee. There were about 20 power supplies that we ended up returning to save the town $1,989.91. 296 is to move a splice connection. We have a splice in the data room on the 2nd floor in a piece of plywood that we know is a sensitive issue for the town. So we want to rectify that by simply taking that splice connection, moving it to the council chambers above the ceiling of the Helen Nelson room. And we would do that work on a Saturday to create minimal disruption to the town hall. That would be out of CM contingency for $0 increase of the GMP. 297, knowing that we've got budget constraints and looking at the progress of the abatement, knock on wood, we've been pretty lucky so far to not encounter anything major. I'm releasing a small portion of the CM contingency to help with these ads of $20,000 going back. That would go back into the owner's contingency. 298, that is to get three-phase power to the gym mat hoist. They originally specified as single phase, so there's the labor to pull the additional wire, and also includes the overhead conduit to get to the mat hoist for $5,459.54. 299. So this request came towards the end, right before the turnover of phase one, to go back once more and sanitize the project, which we did. That's the cost, $1,125.50. 303 is to settle up on the allowance that we held for paint touch-ups after we got through all of the touch-ups. Based on the punch list we received from the design team, we were able to return a small amount of that allowance totaling $600 back to the town. 304 has to do with getting plumbing to a new piece of equipment, the ice cream machine that's been introduced to the Parks and Rec kitchen. That is based on a new drain line and supply line for that ice cream machine for $1,085.16. 305 has to do with the updated planting plan that was received from the design team, and that plan takes out 4 trees, basically hugging that south side of the community center. So there's a credit back to the town for $2,538. 306, we held a separate line item within the GMP for joint sealants. We essentially took care of joint sealants with other trades as part of their own base bid. So I feel confident at this point releasing that $15,000 back to the town as savings. 310 has to do with phase 2. We came across an existing sprinkler line that was feeding the police station that basically ran through a portion of the town hall. So that portion that's in the town hall, we have to cut and cap that piping and then refeed sprinkler heads. I believe they're within the stairwell of the police station. To rework that cut cap is $5,552. So when you add all these up, it nets out to $9,077.84.
Are there any questions of Frank on those change orders? Anthony Claffey, please. Go ahead, Anthony.
In regards to COP number 310, is there a way to take that and put it specifically to phase 2 and take it out of any phase 1 COPs that we may approve or deny tonight? So we can basically close out phase 1?
Well, we still have a dozen changes or so that I still have yet to talk about that are, related to phase 1.
Okay.
In terms of the contract, it's really all one contract.
Okay.
It's not separated.
So do we want to talk about finish all the phase 1 stuff before we even go into phase 2, or is that 310?
Well, 310 really is a critical item for us. I discussed it a little bit with Joe already. We've got to move this sprinkler line, to proceed with demo of the old town hall. So.
You make a good point, Anthony. We could have went either way, but there is urgency to do this because the demo team is concerned about moving forward in the way they would normally move forward to take this building down without an early resolution to this issue. But, I clearly understand your point. It's a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Frank? Mr. Minor, please.
Thank you, Joe. Just real quick, Frank, was there any other resolutions thought in regards to that lower elevation jump up to the Parks and Rec? I know there was some initially, but a few different alternatives. Was that the only one that was vetted to be viable, or how did that come about?
I can add something to that if I might. It's Joe again. We looked at a number of other options that were, you go from this actually to ones that do quite a bit of damage. They don't phase out or phase in, and these will create the maximum discomfort according to the manufacturer and to other people who made comment on it that have used it with a minimum amount of harm. So we want to deter them from getting up there, but I don't think we want to inflict substantial harm to them. And the ones that Downs looked at, and they looked at, or the design team looked at a number of them, they go from this to actually making cuts in people's arms or legs. I don't think it's where we want to be. We meet the Occupier Liability Act in the state of Connecticut by doing this. So we're covered on the liability of not giving proper notice by posting signs that go along with this system that we would post on the wall, Chris, near that. So we cover that from an insurance issue and from a notification issue. But it's a good question, and we did, I remember you're concerned about it the first time we did examine it. And I can tell you frankly, this is probably the maximum discomfort. I put my own hand on them. I didn't walk on it, but I did experience it. And beyond this, you get into some really heavy duty stuff that I don't think we'd want to take on at this time.
Okay. Do you know if they were able to ever vet any type of cost in terms of actual screening that would prohibit anybody from getting up there, but also obstruct the equipment that's on the low roofs that's, you know, kind of visible from the upper lots? I know we talked about it. I just don't know if
I did talk to Tom about it. Tom Arcari was looking at something, and when he looked at this compared to the screening, he thought this would be a better way to go in terms of any damage they may do to the screening or even to themselves trying to get the screening off. It's kind of a balancing game between protecting ourselves and, in a sense, protecting the fools who may attempt to go up there, you know, or just a young person looking for adventure.
Right. Yeah, no, I just wasn't sure if he had actually costed that out. That's all. I just wanted to check on that because that was kind of twofold that it
Yeah, I didn't, to be frank with you, I don't know about the cost part of it. It was comparable or more. I know that. How much more, I don't know. But when we looked at the comparison of the risk to damage of the individual versus the security part of it, we decided to recommend this to the committee.
All right. And this is the only area that would be applied to, correct? It would just be
correct.
Southeast corner.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I guess for the interim, we could deal with it with this
Right.
point, the liability versus aesthetics being something totally different.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Frank? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to act on these change orders for $9,077.84. Mr. Mortensen? Was anybody else hearing me?
I can make the motion, Joe. Make the
Okay,
motion
you go ahead.
as presented for a sum total of $9,077.84 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Gail. Any discussion on the items? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimously approved. Okay, thank you. Are you looking to act on any of these magnitude of order items, Frank, tonight?
Let's just go through the list here real quick, if I
Because
may.
I've got to get a transfer number to Jeff, so I want to make sure that,
Okay.
you go ahead, and then we'll come back to what Mr. Barron's going to require. Go ahead, please.
Okay, yeah, so 249, the standby power, that information I noted was in design. That information has come to us finalized from the design team. That's not something we need to proceed with immediately. Additional signage for, I noted exterior doors, but it's really exterior and interior locations. Again, this is not something we need to proceed with immediately. I do know that the town is working with the design team on this to finalize that. Flagpole, again, not in a rush. I can't install these flagpoles anyway until the old building comes down. But that is something that has been put back into the design team's court to reevaluate and look at these brackets that we believe have to be field modified to accept the tapered flagpoles.
That's on the west side?
Yes, on the west side.
Okay.
286 lock sets for department suites. I had initially put a rough order of magnitude on this of 1,693, but that was based on the assumption that we could work with the existing lock bodies in the doors. Since this update, we've learned that we cannot install a key override for these lock sets. So we're going to need new lock sets. I need to reevaluate the pricing on this. And unfortunately, I don't have updated information just yet. Worked with the design team as late as today on this and did get something over to our vendor today. So I'm waiting for some new pricing on it. 288, that's the credit. That's the credit that I talked about earlier. That was originally part of COP 34. That's essentially the balance of the credit from 34, the 7,090. 292. Again, this is something that we're working on. I would like to proceed with this, but I'm not comfortable with the rough order of magnitude only because our mason has gone back a couple times and this scope may have grown from the last time I looked at this and gave a rough order of magnitude.
Okay.
300 HVAC for human services, refrigerators. Again, that's in design, so my hands are tied until we get more answers from the design team how to handle this equipment. But essentially, we've got these large refrigerators that we're placing human services that we feel need to be exhausted. They came with pieces of ductwork, so we need to vet that and make sure we don't need to run new HVAC for those. 301 is the commemorative plaque. I did get design information late in the week last week. Again, not a rush. I did get pricing on it. We are within that rough order of magnitude. So I'll be finalizing that shortly. 302, the abatement of floor mastic. That is something we'd like to proceed with because it's phase 2 and it's work that that we're in the midst of doing now. We're in that area. 307, 308, and 309, I'm essentially just reconciling line items within our GMP. So the good news is you see some credits, some sizable credits there. The starting with 307, the temp toilets, they basically went away when we turned over the space. And the temp toilet setup that we've got right now for phase 2 is being managed directly by the demo and abatement subcontractor. So I'm confident that, at least 10,000 or more can go back to the town as savings for that line item. The dumpster allowance, kind of the same thing. We had a 30-yard dumpster throughout the course of phase 1. When we turned over the building, we got rid of that 30-yard dumpster. We do have a very small dumpster, a 6-yard dumpster that sits outside our trailer to take care of some small general debris. So there's going to be a decent give back there. I'm projecting 20,000 at the end of the project for that allowance. And then in general for 309, I'm going through the balance of the trades. So just like I did for the general trades, I'm doing for the rest of the trades that were part of phase 1. where I'm going line by line and reconciling their final contract values. The 56,880 is a sizable credit that's obviously helping us budget-wise. Most of that, just to give you some insight on that credit, where all that's coming from, most of that is coming from the plumbing line item. When I went back to the value management, we gave back a sizable credit for plumbing, but we gave only half of it back. So essentially the other half, or 49,000 roughly speaking, is in that $56,000 credit. So it's mostly plumbing. 311 is the phase 2, another phase 2 change, where we came across a condenser in the auditorium, I believe, that is feeding cooling in a data space in the police station. So we're looking at a couple options. That condenser, from what I understand, is in not too good a shape. We wouldn't recommend relocating that condenser. We would recommend replacing the condenser with a new piece of equipment. But the 9,521 is just taking into account that we would just relocate to install new with a new line set. There's probably a couple $1,000s more than what that rough order of magnitude showing there. But anyway, the total that I'm showing right now, a net deduct of 29,055.16. And then depending on how these designs pan out, you know, there's a little bit of flux in there.
Frank, to go back to Anthony's position on, you know, these phase 2 items getting mixed with the phase 1, this particular situation now, again, was found by the demo team when they were going through the building. Is that how we came about this condenser issue, or that was through your evaluation? I'm just, committee's just
It
curious.
could have been a little bit of both, Joe, between our superintendent, the town, and our demo contractor. We came across that unit.
And would this condenser situation be done about the same time that the fire situation, the sprinkler situation would be resolved? Would you be scheduling those to be done in concert with one another, or how would?
Yeah, ideally, yes. We'd like to do both of those around the same time.
All right, so you'll be coming back to us next month with more specifics on some of these, as you say, that you need to accumulate?
Yes, correct.
All right. Consider to take action on fund transfer, Mr. Barron.
Yes, I'm looking,
Is that the 9,077.84 you're looking at?
yes, I'm looking for a transfer of $9,077.84 from the owner's contingency account number 3110-9912, to the construction account number 3110-9911.
Mr. Minor, would you like to make that motion, please?
Make that motion as it's been presented for the transfer of $9,077.84 from contingency to construction.
Thank you. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Gail. Any discussion? Please signify if you're in favor by saying aye.
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 I believe Mr. Claffey has a question. He's got his hand raised.
Go ahead, Anthony.
I'll take my question after you move the 9,077.
All right, then that was passed unanimously. Go ahead, Anthony, with your question, please.
I guess my question moves toward the subsection B of the orders of magnitude that Frank was speaking of for the, you know, the dozen or so COPs that are right in front of us here on the screen.
Right.
And I know that we reconciled some money. We, you know, prior to B, you gave us some money back. You took some money. You know, the contractors ate some money, et cetera, et cetera. So there's nice ball playing here per se between everyone. But I guess my concern, you know, kind of goes with the phase 2 or the demo, however you want to call it. You're calling it phase 2. but we kind of, in these COPDs, we're kind of bouncing around in the orders of magnitude, and like the standby power for NCTV on 249, $3,700. I mean, is that something above and beyond what was scoped? Are we, are we following this differently? You get into 292, which is the camera / WAP adjustments. That's a big ticket item that can make that $29,000, disappear pretty quick. So I guess I'm just trying to understand this more as all these COPDs, I got 6 emails worth of COPDs, and it does, and I know it's all under one number, but we're still charged with the intent to keep this project at a set price. And I know today it's a negative 29 plus or minus, but it seems like some big ticket items are popping up here. I mean, we're not talking like the lock sets. Are we following that? I mean, did they order the wrong lock sets? Why are we being charged $700? It'll get back to my original question many, many years ago of how are we following these kind of odd numbered changes?
Well, I can tell you, Anthony, that out of these, there's 13 COPs here under the order of magnitude section. I can tell you that, they are orders of magnitude. So
yeah,
we haven't released anything. So, we're still in the process of finalizing these. We can certainly talk about them once we get final numbers.
Okay.
And talk about, what happened here? Why are we doing this now? That kind of thing. And then, maybe there's some COPs where we can take a step back and decide whether or not we even do them.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And I get like number 311. It's something that maybe no one saw. It just happened. I get that. And I appreciate the 307, 8, and 9. Maybe someone else would have moved that money somewhere else. But it just kind of like 292. I mean, have I just not seen this before? I mean, that's a $12,000 number. That's one of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
Like, where did this come out of it? I mean, maybe being a little more descript on some of it. Maybe I just missed it in previous meetings. I don't know.
I don't know how many meetings the 292 has been on, maybe just 1 or 2 meetings. The amount probably has grown. The 12,166 that we're seeing now. Again, we could talk about that. We do have options. The idea behind the 12,166, though, essentially what we're doing is moving cameras and wireless access points that are on the outside of the mostly the community center, which have cast panels on the outside. So rather than patch the cast stone where we've drilled previously for these cameras and wireless access points, we want to replace the stone and give you a new look because it's a new building. So that's what's driving that cost. If you want to patch, we could save some money. So we could look at both options and figure out what's the best course of action.
Okay, and I appreciate that. But what was the driving force in this? Was there a technology change, or was it a need-want change? Which way? Was it a need or a want? Was the camera located on the drawing incorrectly? So then the guy who installed the pre-wiring did it to this, and you see where I'm getting at? Like, I'm just trying to understand a little more in depth.
I know where you're drilling down here. The
Why
bottom
don't
line is
this, Frank? Paul Abuta is gonna had his hands raised. I'd like to hear Paul's comment.
Let me just say one thing. So we installed the locations where the cameras are shown on the documents. That's where we installed them.
Okay.
So,
and I'm not what I'm getting at is, and I'm not pointing blame at anybody. I'm just saying that we never really dive into things in our building committee meetings. We just seem to, in the past 6 months, just like check off dots and approve monies. But outside of the,
I can't agree with that. We get a lot of explanation from Downs on all these things.
But what I'm getting at, Joe, is we'll spend an hour talking about the how much the generator can handle, but then we get into these $12,000-$15,000 things. It's no one wants to discuss them. I guess.
Well,
I guess
people,
that's just
I always ask if someone has a question.
I know, and
This is
this has
just
only
or
been on
not
twice.
interested.
Joe, this has only been here twice on our thing, so I get it. It's a newer item,
But
but it's a high price ticket.
I understand, and no one is saying you shouldn't ask about it. But to say that we just, rubber stamp things, I think that's
Well,
a lack of appreciation for all the efforts that go in at project meetings that I attend faithfully, and that Downs works hard and other people, administration, design team do to provide the information, but they're numerous. And some of them, I'll grant you, are like fleas at a picnic or flies at a picnic.
true.
Got to be dealt with, but you got to swat them away. But
Okay.
I want to move on. I appreciate your comments, Anthony. I want to move on and let Paul address some of these. He raised his hand. Go ahead, Paul, and then it'll be Chris Minor after that.
Thank you, Paul Boutat, in IT. And so to answer towards Mr. Claffey's question on this, on the onside of the project, the outside cameras and the wireless access points locations were discussed with DiAgostino and Associates. They were the subcontractor from DTC. DTC subcontractor, or contractor for QA&M. We basically explained to them what we wanted, what we were looking for. It was apparent, I guess, during the construction project that DiAgostino did not look at some of those locations to determine that there was a glass wall in the case of, say, the Parks and Recreation area, at which point then QA&M moved the wireless access point to an overhang location, which did not work for us. I have asked Mark from Colliers to track this as design issues versus the town being responsible for these type of changes because they were not caught during the time period where DiAgostino should have looked at the envelope of the building, made correct changes at his location to the design team so the drawings could have been issued correctly.
That's exactly what I want to hear. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Paul, are you all set?
Yes.
Anthony, you're set?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, Mr. Minor, please.
Thank you. Just to follow up on Paul's point, there are definitely some issues on location that do not, accommodate our need. And I think some of that was due to design changes that occurred throughout the project. The one that jumps out at me is the one that's the top of the stairwell coming out of the gymnasium that you can literally, reach up off the wall. Had that location been its original design of coming out ground level to the Parks and Rec entry on the first floor, it would be a non-issue, but the design changed and it didn't appear that the location of that camera fixture itself changed with it. So he is correct in that there are some that we're going to have to address, but I think they're at least acknowledged at this point.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Any other questions on these? And these will come back to us. And I think Frank, in fairness, does a good job in detailing as much information that he has to pass on with these. And excuse me, and as you will recall, initially we had a lot of RIFs from the trade, request for information, and that generated a magnitude of lists, as you all know, historically for the project. But that has been contained now to very few RFIs. Am I correct in that, Frank? Requests for that's pretty much gone, and these are, I would say, the residue, not diminishing the quality of any of these that have to be looked at, but this is the residue, what's left of that, and some of it seems like it pops up, but it usually pops up because there's a legitimate argument between a couple of parties whether it provides the kind of service it was intended to. And it's a healthy conversation to have it. I agree with that. And that's why he lists these under magnitude of pending revisions, because he doesn't want to keep it from us, and certainly wants to make it representative of what we have to look at. So, okay. We'll move on to Old Town Hall demolition and abatement update. Frank? You want to give us an update on the demos, well, the abatement schedule, where we are, where we're going, and when we'll be done with that, and your estimated time for the takedown of the old ship?
Mr. Chairman, were we going to finish C and D, the rejected COPs and requisitions?
Yeah, we could touch on that real quick, James. Yeah, item C basically hasn't changed from the last time we met. All those items I've previously reported to the committee. In terms of requisitions, work in place from the August rec through the end of August, we've got 24,644,769.12 work in place. So that leaves roughly 5 million to go. And the retainage that's currently being held on our contract is 961,807.28. So that on a percentage basis is roughly 85%. That would be percent complete with the entire project.
Okay, any questions on those? All right, do you have anything else on that, Frank?
Excuse
No.
me, Mr.
Go ahead, Mr. Minor had a question.
Just real quick, 302 was the mastic and the second floor. Is that you touched on it that you were potentially looking for something. Does that need to be addressed before this comes an official COP? Or are you all right with it as it is?
I'm okay with it as it is.
All right, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'll go back. Thank you, James, by the way, for pointing that out, so we could review those items. Can you give us now, Frank, an update on where we are on abatement and an estimated date of when the demo would begin?
Yeah, so I kind of touched on it already in the schedule overview. So abatement, again, we're working top down. We're on the third floor. We have a chunk of the abatement already completed on the top floor along the north side. So we're in the midst of wrapping up abatement in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I'm going to say, on the floors below. So the second, first, and then we're also in the midst of doing the soil abatement as well in the areas below the auditorium, taking out that soil right now. And in a few weeks, we will begin the demo of the main structure, the heavy demo, if you want to call it that. The heavy demo will start in roughly 3 weeks. The week of the 21st would be the early start. Will be in that time frame. We've revised the master schedule. We've worked up a schedule primarily around phase 2, and we've mapped out all of the activities. We've met with trades. We've got rebar on order right now. We do have to construct new veneer masonry along the east side of the police station. Once the old town hall comes down, we'll have to put some new exterior wall back on the police station. So that rebar is on order. And yeah, in a few weeks, we're going to get into the heavy demo. We'll start by working our way into the building from the west side. We'll create an opening there along the west side of the old town hall. We'll get into the courtyard. We have to ramp up into the courtyard. And then essentially we'll start to dismantle the building from the north side, starting on the Cedar Street side within that courtyard. I mentioned the shingles would come off. That's actually any of the roof shingles will start coming off next week. And then we'll basically peel away the building. We'll peel back the sheathing after that, and then roof steel. And then we'll work our way down the structure, starting on the north side, working towards the gym. And so, like I said before, getting back to the master schedule, we've met with the site guy and worked out a way to try and coexist with him so that we can fast track some of this work, because the goal here is to be complete with all the work by the end of the year. Now, that's the ideal situation. There may be, depending on the weather, it's always tricky as you get into the fall, as most of you guys know. We may be looking at coming back in the spring to do some seeding, and hopefully that's all it is. So, right now we're tracking based on that revised master schedule, and we'll continue to keep close tabs on it.
Are there any questions of Frank on that? On the, okay, I don't know who you are. I see two participants, James.
You have Councilor Minor and Mr. Boutot.
Okay, Mr. Boutot first, please.
Yes, I just had a question. The one concern that I have is the chimney stacks close to the new building. What's the plan with taking those down to ensure that we don't have an issue?
Yeah, so on top of the fencing protection that we have in place separating us from, from the phase 1 and phase 2, we are going to be putting in scaffolded walkway protection that's going to essentially hug the west side of the building. It's going to protect anybody that would be egressing from that side of the building. So that work, I know our superintendent is coordinating right now to schedule that work prior to start of demo. I believe the week of the 14th is what we talked about, to have them come in. They're going to need a few days to set up that walkway protection, and that'll be along that west side. As far as the chimney demo, we're not going to go in and just start knocking that down, and wherever it falls, it falls. That's going to be carefully coordinated so that we're demoing those pieces away from the first phase of the project.
Okay, thank you. And just while I got the floor for a second, I had the town clerk that was just asking for future reference on material that was used to seal the floor in the vault. Is that something we'll be getting on the information as far as the paint colors and products that were used in case we need to reapply or have something in the future?
Yeah, that's not a problem, Paul. We can make that part of the closeout package that we're going to deliver to you. We can include the product data for that.
And then the town clerk also wanted me to pass along that the vault cage portion was installed this past Tuesday, so that's complete in the vault.
Oh, good.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Paul, I had a quick question of you, if I might.
Go ahead. Sure.
What's the schedule on setting up your storage area in the basement? Are you working with the school system on that, or?
Currently, that is assigned to the town clerk. James is working on that as far as organization and shelving through one of his vendors. So that's not under my court right now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Trying to scroll through on the agenda here. Architect in here at all sectionally, Joe?
But bring up anything you like. It's not specific, but go ahead.
Okay, I just was looking through the attendees. I'm not sure if anybody's on from QA&M.
Usually Chris is here. Chris, are you here?
This is Tom Arcari. I'm here this evening.
Tom is here. Go ahead. Did you have a question to Tom, Chris?
Yeah, if you would.
Go ahead.
We just recently received the marshal's report back in regards to occupancy at the gym regarding the bleachers. And I just wanted to see if we could clarify this in terms of what occupancies are allowed and how the configurations are set up for different functions depending on the programming for the space. If you could touch on that, just to provide a little bit of refreshment for anybody that doesn't recall exactly how this laid out.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the bleachers in the gym were configured so that there are multiple options for seating. There are bleachers on the east and west side of the gymnasium, which hug the sidelines of the two high school size basketball courts. And there are bleachers on the south side of the gymnasium, which hug the sideline of the sort of the cross, the main premier basketball court. So we submitted a diagram to the building committee about 10 days ago. Joe Harpy has that diagram. And what that demonstrates is that there are actually 3 different bleacher configurations. The first of which, let's call it, for lack of a better term, the AAU configuration, where you would be using the 2 high school sized basketball courts. The bleachers on the east and west sides of the gym get pulled out approximately 4 or 5 rows each, because that's all the space there is to allow walking between the end of the bleachers and the court. That provides, I don't have the numbers in front of me, I'm in the car, but it's approximately 120 seats on each side. Maybe it's a little bit more. And then the bleachers on the south side of the gymnasium stay completely closed and retracted. The second configuration is the premier court configuration, where you might have one large basketball game in the middle of the court, or you might have one large performer or concert set up in the middle of the north side of the court. In that configuration, the bleachers on the south side of the gym would be extended full length, and the bleachers on the east and west sides of the gym would be extended approximately 85% of the way out. Those specific row configurations are indicated on the diagram, the seating chart diagram. This provides approximately 950 total seats and allows, again, code compliant egress from all parts of the gymnasium. And then finally, there is a third configuration for the seating, which would accommodate seating just for the 2 individual volleyball courts, which are smaller, or if the central partition is closed and you had 2 individual events, one in each side of the gym, the east and west bleachers can be opened 100%. And then the bleachers on the south side would be fully closed. So there are 3 options for seating. There's been a little bit of confusion about this, and in particular, if you read the letter from the state fire marshal, he indicates that all of the bleachers cannot be pulled out all at the same time. And that's correct, because that would actually present an egress challenge. So the bleachers have to be configured the way they were originally designed, depending on the option and the activities in that gymnasium.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Anybody have any other questions? Okay, we'll move.
Joe,
Mr. Chapman has a question, Joe.
Yes, Town Manager, go ahead, please.
okay, just based upon what was just presented by the architect, can you tell me, because I wasn't here, when was this information conveyed to the committee that the entire bleachers could not be used at the same time?
Is that a question of me? I don't recall us discussing that or seeing that. We were under the impression that all the bleachers would be out at any given time, and I think Parks and Rec wasn't clear on that, because when I would ask that question of Billy DeMayo, he would say, well, we would never have 900 people there, of course, but there wasn't any stipulation how we would know or not know we had 900 people. So I think I hadn't seen anything this specific until I was sent this by Mr. Arcari a couple of weeks ago.
So this is news to you as the chairperson of the committee?
To be honest, it's news to me and others on the committee that I talked to that once the fire marshal signed off, the original fire marshal, and I understand from what you told me, he was looking at the original documents, the committee kind of just exhaled. You know, we thought we were good to go. And then the other issue came up and apparently it wasn't specified to the original fire marshal who signed off because he never indicated. I had private conversations with him about my concern and other committee members' concern about the capacity issue. And he said, no, I'm good to go. That's what he said to me. I'm good to go, Joe. But I understand that that wasn't, then that was noted in another set of plans in January and footnoted. And of course, that fire marshal had retired. But that, I think he was retired. I don't know.
Just to advise you as the chairperson and the committee as a whole, I've looked at the documents that were submitted periodically through the process apparently, and dated documents. The first time that this issue that I see as a real problem with the bleachers was on no documents until January of this year, which was a little bit late. So there is a problem that I think is going to have to be addressed because the fire marshal, state fire marshal's office is advising the town that the bleacher configuration will result in a serious egress situation that will have to be managed for each and every event unless the bleachers are designed differently. And I think the bleachers are already being shipped. So we have a major issue, but we'll get into it further as we move along. But I think that the issue was never brought to you as a committee. And from what I understand in talking with counselors, they were not aware that not all the bleachers could be used at the same time. And my understanding is this project was promoted on the basis that all bleachers could be used at the same time. So I don't know. I'm just letting you know where I stand on this issue. And I'm trying to stay out of, the nitty gritty on this whole project, but this is getting pretty serious now that the state fire marshal has issued a ruling. Thanks.
Oh, so Keith, are you saying that you wouldn't be comfortable with a monitoring program? You would prefer a permanent fix? So,
Well, as the public safety director for the town, the problem with developing a monitoring program is there has to be, we'll say, accountability and an understanding by all parties of what is restricted and how this whole bleacher system would work. And if, God forbid, that communication fails and those bleachers are fully extended and that gymnasium becomes full of occupants and something bad happens, we could have a real situation on our hands that, as public safety director, I've been concerned about the exit with the stairway. I've brought this up a number of times, but this bleacher situation is something that should have never been designed the way it is and was never conveyed, I don't believe, to the elected body or the committee that this was the way it's going to work, because it's going to involve now, how are we going to assure that those bleachers don't get opened up by mistake? And Murphy's Law prevails, so something bad could happen, Joe. And it should have never been designed that way.
okay,
So I
so
am concerned, yes.
working towards a possible resolution, I did have a conversation by text with Mr. Arcari today, and he did say, and he wasn't sure, he said, well, perhaps the manufacturer of the bleachers would have some suggestions. I then called Frank, and Frank said he would be happy to make a phone call to them. No guarantees that they could do anything at this point, but he'd be willing to make a phone call to see if we could get a permanent fix. I don't know if it's possible. but we would bring that information to your attention, obviously, and the committee's attention as soon as we got it.
That would be good, Joe, because I'm just concerned, that this is not going to work out correctly. And, I don't want to see anybody get hurt, and I'm concerned with that. So I'll let you guys continue on. I just didn't want to have this go noted.
You have the committee's commitment that we will try to work towards a satisfactory resolution to the town and everyone else.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Minor, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify whether or not there were any requests for information anywhere along the line or with the submittals as they were sent out, if there were any issues that were brought up or drawn at that point. Can anybody speak to that? Or the second question would be, it's my understanding that the bleacher systems will be operated by Parks and Rec employees, and you only have 3 possible configurations. So it seems to me that there is a viable solution to training staff that these are your 3 configurations based on your programming space. And that way you're going to maximize your seating based on the configuration of whatever the programming event is. I'm just a little confused in terms of, what the underlying issue is. If that can be met and this can be accommodated by staff by setting up the bleachers based on the event, I'm just a little confused, but that's my opinion.
I can opine upon it a little bit, Chris, in that the system was designed to provide the most amount of flexibility for Parks and Recreation. The design was discussed with the Director of Parks and Recreation back when it was done. It was discussed that there would be various configurations of the bleachers that would be pulled out, and that would have to be managed depending on the events that are run. And the Parks and Rec Director, Bill DeMayo, said, this is not an issue. Tell us how many rows we pull out. So there were discussions held during the design process and certainly before the documentation process was had. I understand there are concerns now. I'm not going to belittle those concerns. I think they're solid and they should be discussed.
Okay, thank you, Tom. All right, so we're going to speak to the manufacturer's rep, see if there's anything to do a permanent fix. And if not, well, either way, we'll pass the information on to administration, and they'll be the ultimate deciders of which way things are going to go for the town. Okay, any other business pertinent to the committee?
You have Councilor Minor with his hand up and Commissioner Woods.
Okay, Mr. Woods, please.
I just want to go back a bit. At some point, there was definitely.
Are you unmuted? I can hardly hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. No, I'm not muted.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. I can hear you now.
I agree with Chris as to where the conversations went. I can't honestly make any statement towards that, but there were discussions on different configurations of the seating for sure.
Okay.
Once the bump out was decided to move forward and the additional bleachers were added, there were definitely discussions that we would not be able to use everything at the same time. Now, whether it was at the committee level or when we were meeting.
It wasn't at the committee level. I checked all our minutes. I had no recollection of it.
When we met with the town manager, the previous town manager, it definitely was discussed.
Yeah,
and I agree with Chris. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's overly difficult. I'm sorry?
I say no, there were a series of those meetings that happened that I wasn't invited to for some reason.
Okay. Well, I think there was a series.
I'm not saying it was related to your discussions. For some reason, she didn't see a need for the chairman to be there.
Well, that's another story.
Yeah, that's another story.
But
okay.
One last thing. I agree with Chris. It doesn't seem like it's insurmountable to have a floor plan laid out for each configuration and for that floor plan to be followed.
Okay, thank you, Don.
Okay.
Okay, James, any other person out there wishing to be part of public participation?
We do have two individuals on. If they'd like, they can raise their hand by using *9 on their phones or using the raised hand button in the Zoom application. At this point, nobody has indicated.
Okay, thank you, James. Comments by committee members. Any member wishing to make a comment? Okay, I just want to,
You do have two individuals.
okay, who
Oh,
I
one
see
now.
Mr. Minor, and who was the other one, please?
It was Commissioner Claffey. Oh, he's back up again.
Okay, Mr. Claffey and then Mr. Minor.
I just want to see how are we proceeding with this? Seems to be pertinent need on the gymnasium. I mean, are we going to proceed with meetings that are held with us involved, or just the chairman and the town? How are we proceeding? I just don't want to get back to we didn't discuss it with the committee, etc.
Our charge was to build a building, and we built the building, and we built the building to the best of our abilities and to the best of the information that we collected from the people that we hired and committed to and trusted to deliver the project. So this committee's done its job in that regard. These issues are important, and they will be settled by administration and whatever department reports to administration. Any cooperation they want from me or the committee, we'll be glad to provide, but at the end of the day, that decision sits with administration and his employees or his various departments. And I don't say that in a caustic way, it's just the reality of how we were created.
Okay.
Our function is by the charter.
So when it comes into all the back and forth on, talking to the manufacturer on the possible configuration changes, is that out of the committee's hands, or is that in the committee hands?
Well, I would say it's ultimately up to administration to act on those recommendations. That would be out of the committee's hands.
Okay. Thank you.
Because we rely on the quality of who's running an area and all the respect that we would avail to those various groups, people, and individuals. But I don't think it's the obligation nor the business in the sense of the functionality that we provided of delivering a building, and we've delivered the building. There are some areas that have to be sorted up. There isn't anything there that I don't think can't be resolved, and we're committed to complete the project, which means taking down the old building. We're committed to getting the complete CO, and we're committed to getting the grant. And then maybe doing something else with our lives, going fishing or whatever we find with the vast amount of time we might find after this is over. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Minor has his hand up.
Yes, Mr. Minor.
No, just in closing, you hit about 90% of what I wanted to say is we were charged to build the building. We did that. The details of going through hundreds of pages of prints was not what we did. We relied on the resident staff that we had within the town to review their specific documentations. The specifics of getting into colors and flooring and various other issues were done on subcommittee levels that were not done as a result of the committee. And the frustration is that everybody has put tremendous time and energy into trying to fulfill the project to completion based on the budget that we had served. So I would echo that we're almost home. There's nothing we can't get past, and any issues that are here will resolve. And it's not without uncommon natures to experience this in a $30 million project. It's the nature of business and nature of construction, but it's not insurmountable. And I don't want to have the project knocked down that it's inferior or improper, because there was plenty of opportunity to address these issues along the way by various parties. That's all I'd like to leave it with. Thank you.
Well, I would say that
Nice
this,
grandstand.
I'm sorry. I would say this committee's always been transparent, always been open to the public. We've all taken phone calls. We've all communicated with various people. And that's something I think we can all be proud of from our perspective. And we'll cooperate and continue to cooperate with the administration in terms of resolving any issues they feel don't meet the need in the way they view it. But again, our obligation, I think, has been met. We delivered a building, and we commit to resolving any issues that might gray that issue in any way. We're committed to work on. So we thank you all, and I thank you all for your attendance this evening, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Stand adjourned. Good evening. Thank you.